I clicked the button. So we should be good now.
Well, the little thing pops up saying is we're now streaming.
Mm-hmm.
And okay. So we will start within the minute or so.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock on Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, and I'd like to call this meeting of the council to order and start with acknowledging that we are in the lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. They continue to care for this land. They continue to shape our township of Georgian Bay today. And we should show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today in guiding our decisions and our actions. Megwich. I'd like to ask my fellow councilors if anyone has any declarations of pecuniary interest or any other conflicts as per our code of conduct. Councilor Bocek.
I'm sorry I can't pull up my agenda while I'm on this page, but I do have a declaration of indirect pecuniary interest on the item of the lease above the library for Remax Georgian Bay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Know anybody who might work in that building?
Yeah, and she'd hit me if I didn't do this.
Any other declarations? Okay, seeing none. We have a couple of guests who would like to make a couple of deputations to us. Heather Sargent and Brooke Harrison of the Georgian Bay Forever group. And I think Ms. Sargent, if you're the one who's taking this, or Ms. Harrison, I don't know who's in charge of the first part of this presentation, but whoever it is, I'm going to say the screen is yours.
Awesome, thanks so much. I just want to know on the agenda, is Phragmites first or plastics?
Phragmites.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brooke.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, everyone should be able to see the PowerPoint that is now up. So thank you, everyone. Hello, good morning. My name is Brooke Harrison, and I am the project coordinator at Georgian Bay Forever, managing the Phragmites eradication program. Thank you for supporting invasive Phragmites management in 2020 with a $20,000. Today, I will be reviewing our 2020 successes and provide a breakout of the 2020 request of $25,000. In your package, it does explain what Phragmites is, but I quickly want to remind everyone of what it is and why we are working so hard to protect our coastal wetlands and shorelines. Phragmites outcompetes with native vegetation, resulting in a decreased plant biodiversity, which in turn provides a poor ecosystem for wildlife, including several species at risk in the area. Phragmites grows very quickly, creates dense monoculture stands, and has no natural controls. Additionally, it ruins recreational water frontage that once would have been used for swimming and boating. So the method of control that we use is cutting underwater. This method drowns the plants out, not allowing any oxygen to get to the plant and putting enough pressure on the root system to kill it. So we are now at 51% eradication in Township of Georgian Bay. We are over halfway to our common goal of eradication, which I will highlight in this presentation. So this is a map of what the Township of Georgian Bay looked like in 2019. And this is what it looked like in 2020. So I just want to highlight what this legend means. So if we look at the legend, the red sites are sites that have been mapped by Georgian Bay Forever but have yet to receive any treatment. Yellow sites are sites that have been cut and are on track to eradication. And these green sites are ones that have received treatment in the past and are now either monitoring or eradicated. So these sites will be continued to be monitored for years to come, but it allows us to focus on new areas. What this shows is the program is working and we are now 1 year closer to achieving eradication. We made tremendous achievements this year, and by the year 2024, we'll see 91% of the stands eradicated. So now that we have an understanding of what this legend looks like, again, I just want to bring your attention to this is what the map looked like in 2019. And this is what it looked like in 2020. So we are seeing more and more of these green and yellow stands and very few of these red stands, which are mostly in the kind of southern Port Severn Sound area. And this is what we hope to see in 2020 or by the year 2025. So you'll see majority of them are eradicated, which is over 90% that you'll be seeing here. So if you think kind of Phragmites eradication on conveyor belt, they start in these very large monoculture dense stands, and they do take up to 1 to 4 years of continuing to control for them to be into this eradication stage. So some numbers to highlight here in this chart, it's comparing the 359 sites mapped in 2019 versus those same 359 sites mapped in 2020. So you can see here, looking at the sites over 10 meters squared, in 2020, we were down 12% of sites from 79 to 37 sites. And then 140 sites are under 10 meters squared, which can be controlled by the community. And the really exciting number to look at here is the number of stands in the monitoring and eradication stage. In 2019, we saw 26% or 26 in this stage. And in 2020, we saw a remarkable 182 or 51% of stands being monitored or eradicated. So what this means again is that these stands have been cut and controlled many times and they are no longer growing back. So it shows that our methods are working and we're over halfway to completion of this program. Then this photo shows just what it looks like before and after cutting. So this is a site in Honey Harbor. You can see in the after cutting, one of our students, one of our frag busters there. So this is what it looks like before and after we do the cutting. So how is this accomplished? These are just some images of GBF in the field over the summer. We had 3 dedicated students that were responsible for mapping, educated, and controlling these stands. We work closely with different community members and educate the community for stands in front of their own properties. So I just want to quickly touch on some 2020 highlights. So we know our program is working. We had GBF staff work with 42 volunteers to cut 112 sites. Of the 432 sites mapped in 2020, 303 are under control. We communicated with 222 concerned citizens to properly educate on how to safely and properly remove and dispose of Phragmites. In communities like Honey Harbor, Cognisheen, 12 Mile Bay, and Wawatezi, these areas are seeing decreased stands, which allows us to focus on new areas. So if you remember the map at the start, in the southern region, there's still a lot of these red marks, which is where we need to focus on. This year, we were able to map that area, which is why we added 87 new sites. These aren't necessarily actually new sites, they're just newly mapped. But it gives us the time when the other areas are getting smaller in size, it gives us time to focus on these priority areas now. And then as mentioned in previous years, in 2018 and 2019, we were working in Lily Pond, and I'll highlight in a minute, but we continued to work in Lily Pond. So what this highlights is the program. The quicker we tackle it, the less expensive it's going to get. And with an ask of $25,000 in 2021, we will reach our goal of eradication. So truxers in 2018, 2019, we brought these to Lily Pond, which is a provincially significant wetland, and they had been completely overtaken by invasive Phragmites. This area had destroyed habitat and the ecosystem. So truxers are amphibious machines that remove Phragmites at a rate that human power could just never do. In just 2 years, we removed all the Phragmites in this wetland. In this map here, you'll see the white polygon. That was the area that was controlled by these truxers. So an update for 2020, these are some before and after images of 2020. Nothing that was cut in 2018 and 2019 grew back, which proves the effectiveness of these truxers. This year, we just had 4 individuals were able to clean around the outside of Lily Pond, and it took us about 3 hours to complete this site. So the only maintenance had to be done is these dry areas where the drowning method is not as effective. So we will continue to monitor Lily Pond to make sure it is the health of this wetland is maintained. This year, we are asking for an additional $5,000 to bring the truxers to Quarry Island. As you can see in this map, there's 2 areas on Quarry Island that in the past few years have developed to these large monoculture dense stands. And they're so large in size that the human GBS staff it's out of our control, and we need to bring these truxers to Quarry Island. So we're hoping to bring them to Quarry Island for one day in next summer. I'm just going to quickly turn this over to Heather to give an update on the Ministry of Transportation here.
Good morning, everyone. We all know that highway and roads are spread vectors to the coast, where we've all made such investments in eradicating Phragmites. Georgian Bay Forever and the Ontario Phragmites Working Group has recognized over the years that this is an issue, and we've worked to increase management efforts by the NPO, and specifically, certainly for Georgian Bay Forever, in what is called their central regions and northeastern regions. We really expanded our efforts in 2019 with a partnership with the Township of the Archipelago in a deputation to the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Transportation. Within that deputation, or within that meeting, our role was to identify gaps in treatment of Phragmites on these roads. We did that in detail, and I think last year we provided council with a copy. But what it really boils down to, without getting into all the details, is that we asked for consistent and enough resource funding to make sure that mapping, which determines the scope of the problem, could be done annually and every year. Number 2, that analysis of this mapping, so analysis of the scope of the problem, could be determined to make great plans, to provide transparency to the local municipalities on what was being done, and to determine success metrics. The third thing we asked for is, of course, that there was enough resources to treat all of the Phragmites in the area. While we didn't close entirely all of the gaps, and we'll continue to work on that, and we hope you'll partner with us to do that, there was definitely some success. And we provided council with a letter of the report that's being done, but this is just a snapshot of it. I'm not going to go into all of it, but what it boils down to is more money has been put towards Phragmites treatment on the highways. And specifically, there are some areas that are very important to Georgian Bay, including Highway 11 and Airport 7 Road North, but also that more annual funding and consistent funding was given to Phragmites. So those are great progress, but we wish to do more, and we hope that you will join us in that effort. I'm now going to turn it over to Brooke. Thank you.
So just to highlight, our goal, our ask for 2021 is $25,000, a $5,000 increase over 2020. In 2021, we will map the kilometers of shorelines in June and July to measure the size and density and develop the proper control plan for our cutting season, which is in July and August. We'll hire 2 local students. These students will spend majority of their time controlling the invasive species, but they will continue to spend time with the volunteers and education side of the program. We hope to bring the truxers to Quarry Island, as mentioned, and that this will be used for the additional $5,000. We'll continue to work with the dedicated volunteers to control the smaller stands. COVID-19 dependent, we'll host 5 community cuts, as well as 3 community events to educate and spread awareness. And we'll continue to work with neighboring municipalities to yourselves, such as Tate Township, Township of the Archipelago, Severn Sound Environmental Association, Parks Canada, Ontario Parks, and the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, or Ministry of Transportation. So it's crucial that we continue to invest in this program up front so we quickly reach our goal. We could not let this invasive plant win now, and we know the process is working, so we need to stay the course and continue to invest. So thank you for listening and supporting Georgian Bay Forever. If you remember the map at the start, we are on track to reaching our goal of 90% eradication by the year 2024. We are seeing 51% of the 432 stands in the monitoring eradication stage. So we are very excited about our successes in 2020, and we are looking forward to continuing this in 2021. So thank you so much for listening, and I will open it up to if anyone has any questions for Heather or myself.
Well, Ms. Harrison, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting, and I'm going to ask if any councillors have any questions. I see Councillor Jarvis' hand, so I'll let Councillor Jarvis go first. I see Councillor Cooper's hand. You'll go second.
Thank you for the presentation, guys. My only question is with regards to Parks Canada and the Ontario provincial parks. I know that on those properties, there's significant stands. What's been going on with, I know it took a while to get the MTO to come around. What's going on with the different parks people?
So yeah, we do work Ontario, well, the Massasauga Provincial Park, they have been able to pretty much get all their Phragmites under control now because they've been able to hire students over the past few years. And we do work with Georgian Bay Islands National Park. I'll let them speak to them, but they have received the Impede the Read program, and we are working closely with them and kind of discuss the management process with them that we would recommend for them to control, because we understand that they're in the center of Honey Harbor, and if they don't get it under control, it will continue to be an issue. But we are working closely with Robert, who is in charge of that program at Parks Canada. I think they did have some complications this year due to COVID, but
yeah. What about Awenda? Because to me, that peninsula is a perfect breeding spot for stuff coming out onto the bay.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I talked to the, I believe it was the superintendent of Awenda, and he told me at the time that he had a program and that he was working on it and that it wasn't a significant issue, but I can certainly check back with him. And I will add on to Brooke's discussion of Ontario parks. The superintendent for Massasauga Park is the same superintendent for O'Donnell, and we work with them so that they are controlling their Phragmites in that area.
Thank you. The picture behind me is from Massasauga, so you can see there are no Phragmites there.
Excellent. Well, I'm from, I have a cottage in that point, so in that point of the area, so that's great.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions. You talked about an initiative on Quarry Island. I'd like to know a couple of things. What have the local landowners been doing to date in terms of eradicating Phragmites? And secondly, given that this machine has to go in there, it looks like maybe not much, but what's going to be done with the encouraging the local landowners to maintain the area Phragmites free? That's my first question.
Yeah, so that is kind of our ultimate goal of this program, is continuing the education. We understand some of these stands are so large, which is why we take those on, but we always are trying to work with homeowners to get them out to help control so that they understand how to properly and safely do it. And that we work with Bonnie Blanchard is our kind of a community rep in the Honey Harbor specific area, and she helps mobilize the homeowners to give them the proper tools to go and cut them, because and what we're seeing now, it's often just a stalk or two, and it's important to just quickly go out and remove those on your own, which is part of the education and awareness. So we are seeing, like Present Island, for example, that area is completely controlled by homeowners or cottage owners, so that we are seeing more and more areas where they are taking ownership of it, and that's what we're trying to do. And then, sorry, go ahead, Heather.
I'll just add on to Brooke's commentary. It is the goal of our program to always establish a community leader in each of the areas. I mean, there are some areas where we recognize and continually work towards it, where the amount of Phragmites is just too overwhelming for volunteers to take on it themselves. So that's why it's so important to get to eradication and small size. But not only do we have dedicated community leaders in Honey Harbor, we have them in Cognishine. I think we have them in 12 Mile, we have them in Manitou, we have them in Wawal. I'm not quite sure. One of those is not part of the Georgian Bay Township. We have them in Port Severn. So we really make sure that we have dedicated leaders in that area, and we talk to them for hours and hours in the spring to get ready for these sessions every year, if that helps answer your question.
Yes, except that I was curious as to what had been done so far in that community. I'm talking about Quarry Island. And secondly, have you identified a specific leader for that area?
Not specifically for Quarry Island, as it well, Bonnie is for within Honey Harbor, so she does it within Quarry Island, but so it's not specifically someone on Quarry Island. But in the past, it's just far too large, and the one area, the 2 polygons that I identified, it's also very, very deep water, which is why there's also a need for the trucksters in those specific areas. So it's an area where we hope to focus on for the coming years to continue to improve that island. Yeah.
So I think we would approach it the same way that we approached Lily Pond, in that we knew that there was an issue in Lily Pond. We knew that volunteers couldn't do it. We took in the trucksters with your help and with a bunch of different partners, and also with community support in Lily Pond. That got down to sort of a manageable size. And this year we used the community leader, which was Bonnie, to go in and get the other volunteers to take care of the little bits that were left. And we would do the same for Quarry Island.
So just to finish off on this, I'm aware of what Bonnie's been doing. It's a huge area. Quarry Island's a long way away. So I'm encouraging the recruitment of community volunteers and right across Honey Harbor, not relying on just one individual, would be my suggestion to you. Secondly, while we're still on the water as opposed to the roads, I sort of echo Councillor Jarvis's comments regarding Owenda, particularly Giant's Tomb. There's been some problems there. I know there's been some cutting there, but it's a big area, so and it's outside of our township, so I think we need to be aware of that. Finally, I'd like to ask about the MTO and the areas that you identified in your presentation. I was having trouble identifying areas that were being controlled by MTO in the township of Georgian Bay. Can you be more specific as to, I saw a 400 corridor, but it was in Simcoe County up to Port Severn, but not elsewhere. So I wondered if you could comment about the MTO, what they're doing in the township of Georgian Bay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that I found troubling in this process, and that's why I'm asking you to join with the Township of Archipelago in terms of getting more specifics. When we did the deputation, had asked very specifically about 13 highways, very specifically about those certain regions, and very specifically have challenged political leaders from MPP Miller to, of course, the Assistant Parliamentary Secretary, to go in and please provide specific data. And that's one of the gaps that I identified that we still need to chase. It took quite a bit of energy on my part to certainly get this level of communication. But I think we need your support, as well as you can talk to your MPP in terms of getting more detail. And that's what we really want to organize. And I am talking to Liverance from the Archipelago in terms of kind of maybe establishing kind of a municipal conference to get more details from MTO in terms of what we want. So that's still a gap that needs to be closed.
So I'm sorry, but
join the efforts.
Yeah, so a follow-up on that, if you don't mind, and that is that, but there's a gap. In other words, the gap is that we don't know the information that's what, or if anything, MTO is doing within the boundaries of the Township of Georgian Bay. Is that correct?
I don't know specifically what they are doing, and that is what I find troubling, is they do not release the detail that I and the Township of the Archipelago have asked for, and we asked for on your behalf even last year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm flipping over. Councilor Rienko. You're waving very enthusiastically.
Look,
Was Hazelton, was that exasperation?
yeah, yes, I've had my hand up for a long time and you have ignored it.
Or not seen it because I have a limited screen.
There you go.
Councilor Rienko, followed by Councilor Hazelton.
I can inform you that all the phragmitis between Port 7 and Mactier has been sprayed. So our township is done along the 400. The only concern I have is that they can only go so far off the road. So when it gets beyond the fence line along the 400, there's still maybe some phragmitis, but it has all been sprayed that I can see from here to Mactier. And actually even beyond Mactier, I've noticed some are being done. So they're doing a pretty good job.
Thank you. Councilor Hazelton.
Thank you. Given that Quarry Island is in my ward, I have some knowledge of it. I do know that there are some select people in South Honey Harbor who actually don't live on Quarry Island, who have been aggressively working with the folks on Quarry Island to try to control Phragmites. They've even had the need to borrow my work barge to help remove the material away from Quarry Island. So there is a group of people in South Honey Harbor who are working on this area, but I think what I've heard from both Heather and Brooke, and I thank you very much for your presentation, I think the scope of the problem around Quarry Island is perhaps not as bad as Lily Pond, but certainly I think beyond the task of locals to actually get it under control. And I would absolutely support spending a little bit more money or funding a bit more money from the township to assist in dealing with this problem, because I do understand the amount of effort that the locals have put in on this, and they're having troubles getting control of that area. And it's I think it's really too large to do from a local volunteer perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bochek. Sorry. Brooke, you want to respond?
Sorry, I was just gonna ask if you're able to share some of those contact informations to continue to work together then in 2021.
Yes, if you message me, I will connect you with the people that have been working on it.
Thank you.
Councilor Bochek.
One quick question. I think I can address it to Brooke, and thank you for the presentation, Brooke. Very informative again. Natural life cycle of Phragmites. We've been noticing in the Wasaga Beach area, the Springwater and Clearwater areas, that ponds that were full of Phragmites that have had no attention seem to be self-eradicating, and the stands are getting smaller, the plants are getting smaller, and the older ones seem to be dying off and lying down. I'm wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, they do go dormant in the winter, and then it's the new stock. So that is why you'd see some of those old stalks falling down, and they look like a dry stalk essentially. I have personally not seen that. We work closely with Janice Gilbert, who is kind of the expert of Phragmites, and she has not experienced that or has any experience or knowledge of that. I don't know if Heather has more to say to that.
Yeah, we did hear that in one of the council meetings, and we were curious about that. I mean, that would be fantastic. I think we all want, Phragmites to go away on its own. So we definitely consulted the expert, Dr. Janice Gilbert, who's worked on wetlands and Phragmites forever, and has formed the Ontario Phragmites Working Group, and tried to find whether there was any study or anything that she'd ever heard of about Phragmites just going away. And you can see that we included her response. She has never heard of that. So, I mean, that is not something that has, the experts to date know about according to us. So if there's a specific spot or study that you want to kind of direct us to, maybe we would alert everyone in the sort of scientific community on FRAG about it and try to understand it.
Certainly, that's great. And thank you for your answer. And yes, I will send you an email and put you in contact with my contacts in Wasaga Beach, and perhaps we can have a look at that. It's just, I think other species that have been invasive have in the past eradicated themselves in some cases. We've seen a lot of things in this area just simply disappear over time. So I'm interested in that, and I'll follow up with you on that. Thank you.
All right. No, let's go to the next round here, and that is on plastic pollution.
Sorry, Councillor Cooper had his hand up, sir.
Councillor Cooper?
Just a quick question or observation, I guess. I would like a comment about the high water and the impact that that's having on Phragmites, because it seems that I don't know whether this is what's happening in Wasaga Beach, but I think in some of the areas on the coast of Georgian Bay, the Phragmites is essentially getting flooded out in a certain respect. Can you comment on the high water? Because we've had a swing in the last 5-6 years of about 6.5 feet. And that might have killed quite a bit of Phragmites. Comment, please.
Well, I'll comment first. The high water has really helped, certainly if cuts have been done, right? Because what you're doing is there's, more room for the plant to drown. So it's definitely being covered by a lot more water if cuts have been done. So maybe that's part of why our eradication efforts are jumping up so radically. But this plant, unfortunately, is just a remarkable survivor. It has what been referred to, and I can send you some links, as some interesting capabilities to survive in high and low waters. And they kind of call it, there's a phenomena called snorkeling is one thing, where it can kind of take in oxygen, from its stand that's just kind of poking out in the water and send that oxygen right down to the roots. So, and then there's some ability in terms of the underwater leaves and its ability to kind of absorb oxygen in a different way than kind of other plants. So it has a remarkable capacity to kind of find oxygen and survive in these high and low waters. So I think the high water definitely helps in terms of if a cutting has happened, then it's more likely to be more effective and drown faster. But I don't think it's just going to eradicate Phragmites. Brooke, do you have any further comments?
No, I think that covers a lot of it. I will say, just from being in the field this year, a lot of the sites that we had mapped and we would go to check on, they in say early June, they weren't out of the water. But when we go back in July and August, we do see that they were underwater still. So even if they weren't visible above, we did actually cut a lot of sites that never actually made it above this year, which will be very beneficial for the years to come for it. So.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we should move on to our plastic pollution mitigation deputation, please.
Good morning. I'm the communication director for Georgian Bay Forever, as you know. Georgian Bay Forever is a charity that works on the protection of the water. Today, I'm here to talk to you about Georgian Bay Forever programs that tackle the growing problem of plastic pollution and littering and present an opportunity to invest $15,000 towards the success of these programs. On a per capita basis, just to provide some context, it is estimated that Canadians use about 125 kilograms of plastic per year, and much of that is instantly discarded or lightly used. That generates a lot of plastic waste that is never really going to go away, and it's presently mostly ending up in harder to find landfills. Only 9% is actually recycled, and sadly about 1%, which is still a lot, 29 kilotons of it, is released as plastic waste into the environment annually. How does that relate to Georgian Bay? Well, a study found that 10 million kilograms of plastic enter into the Great Lakes every year. Sure, volunteers can clean up some of it, and that's really important, but it is mostly breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces that never really go away, and this is going on continuously. Starting in 2018 and going to 2023, Georgian Bay Forever, or GBF, has begun programs that plan to invest more than $1 million into plastic mitigation for Georgian Bay. We've worked hard to raise a lot of that funding and bring it to the region and tap into our donors, but we have a gap of more than 200,000. We want to extend this opportunity for you to join our partners and supporters with a $15,000 investment next year to primarily extend the most important part of these programs, education and awareness fostering behaviors that reduce plastic litter. I'm just going to take you through our three main programs. The first program in plastic mitigation involves filters that are affixed to washing machines that catch microfibers in the millions before they go down the drain. And then following that, there's a continuous portion of those that end up in the effluent that goes into Georgian Bay. Why is this program important? Well, microfibers are a form of microplastic in that they are less than 5 millimeters in size, but they're in strand form. Our clothes shed these fibers in the wash. You've seen it in dryer lint. Sheddability depends on a lot of things like its material, its durability, its construction, the type of washing machine, etc. But the reality is between 100,000 to upwards of 700,000 microfibers are going down the drain from one wash of clothes. And we know from worldwide purchasing behavior that about 60% of that is plastic. Wastewater treatment plants, unsung heroes of water quality, they do capture a lot, but 1 to 10% of microfibers get through. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's billions daily. And scientists are actually finding these. A study on 3 of the Great Lakes showed the average abundance in surface water was approximately 43,000 microplastics per square kilometer. Other studies have shown even greater levels in parts of the Great Lakes. And these are from a few years ago. Microfibers have been found in every single sample of fish that the University of Toronto Rockman Lab, one of our partners, has tested. Additionally, there have been studies that have found microfibers in our drinking water, beer, salt. A lot more study definitely needs to be done and is being conducted around effects, but a growing volume of studies show that there is a risk to animal life through physical blockage or chemical contamination. Negative impacts can include decreased feeding and growth, hormone disruption, and decreased fertility. There is no kind of completed research into the effects of human beings. It's even less at this time, though scientists are working hard to catch up to our rate of pollution. Even though we don't know how it impacts us, a World Wildlife Funded study found that the average human digests about a credit card, yuck, worth of plastic every week. At Georgian Bay Forever, we are working to slow this accumulation of plastic in the aquatic environment down. In Parry Sound, we measured and are measuring the Parry Sound wastewater treatment plant effluent before and after affixing 100 washing machine filters to household washers. These filters were proven in a lab to stop 87% or more of microfibers or plastics from going down the drain. Now we are really showing its potential to scale. Next year, the study will be complete, but early findings indicate a reduction in microfiber pollution in the effluent up to 6 million or more daily from just 100 households. So putting it in another way, for this wastewater treatment plant, 10% of its households look to be delivering about a 10% reduction in micro-waste. When the study is complete, and if the findings hold, we'll be sharing those results widely and expect it to scale further by influencing policy, for example, like building filters into washing machines, future washing machines, and also changing more human behavior. We have also expanded this program to 300 households or Collingwood. We're about to start that. And that's going to divert a lot more microplastics that are going into Georgian Bay. By supporting this program, you're facilitating greater education to more people around tips about ways that they can reduce microfiber pollution through purchasing filters and or adjusting washing and clothing purchase behaviors. And as well, we're going to be educating more stakeholders about this study that can affect policy. The second program I want to talk to you about is mitigating unencapsulated polystyrene foam. This graph shows the top 12 litter items picked up by volunteers in shoreline cleanups in 2019. The biggest bar, which the arrow is pointing to, is big and small pieces of polystyrene foam. The most visible sort of source of that foam was unencapsulated dock foam. So the stuff that is used to float up a lot of docks, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. It's trouble because not only does unencapsulated dock foam, like big pieces of it, end up through wind and weathering and lake level variability and storm, cause big chunks of it to break free and be ugly eyesores on shorelines and potential navigational hazards in the water. And you can see this man carrying a load of those from a shoreline cleanup. But they also fragment through those same processes as well as animal burrowing. And those disperse thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces all over that are never going to go away, are nearly impossible to clean up in proportion to the fragmented disbursement. They're just going to get smaller and smaller, kind of risking ingestion by animals. Thanks to the cleanups and citizen scientists providing the data, Georgian Bay Forever took action to mitigate the clear pollution winter here by forming the Say No to Dock Foam Committee in the fall of 2019. It had 3 objectives. One was to find the scientific studies that are out there on fate and effects, which we have done, and you can find the first iteration of that, which is available on our website. We wanted to also research alternatives for floating docks so that all these alternatives at the very least won't fragment tiny pieces of litter all over, and spread all of those alternatives as far and wide as we can so that people have choices. And thirdly, we wanted to work to eliminate this use, the sale of polystyrene foam unencapsulated in the marketplace. Recent successes in driving awareness of this issue include partnering with the Township of the Archipelago for a deputation to the Minister, Jeff Urich of the Ontario Environment, Conservation and Parks, and sharing information with MPP Norm Miller, your MPP for Parry Sound, Muskoka, who just last week tabled a private member's bill, I think it's 228, calling for a ban on future sales of unencapsulated foam for floating docks. We'll be continuing to drive support around these issues and solutions, as well as driving awareness with the public. And doing so forms part of our ask of you today. The third program is one you're familiar with. This is litter trapping technology and the capturing of litter data. Garbage, plastics, and other types of debris enter our water through various channels: wind, littering, and storm drains, just to name a few. Once this pollution enters our waterways, it's extremely difficult and costly to stop its buildup in the environment. Sea bins and litter traps can curtail some of this pollution. Sea bins act like a surface water vacuum, and litter traps capture litter in runoff. Excitingly, the Township of Georgian Bay has installed one of these already as part of the greater and larger Great Lakes plastic cleanup, of which Georgian Bay Forever is also a proud collaborator. Not only do these devices capture litter, they are also a data source that enables identification and quantification of the most serious litter types, so that policies can be put in place to mitigate them actually at source. The proposed contribution will help pay for the measurement and recording of this trash in all of these devices 5 times every dry and wet season, as well as the work to analyze and share that data to identify the major sources of litter with the public and stakeholders in order to make changes that stop the littering before it gets into the environment. I really want to thank you for hearing us today. We will hope you will invest in these programs with $15,000 to help reduce microfiber pollution, unencapsulated dock foam pollution, and other pollution through analysis of litter capturing technologies. I know this will benefit Georgian Bay, and I really want to thank you for listening to us today.
Well, Ms. Sargent and Ms. Harrison, thank you very much for your presentations. Council, do you have, there we go. See everybody, Councillor Bocek, sorry.
Yes, thank you both for doing great presentations. I'm especially interested in the last presentation with plastics. I know that our initiative here in the township by getting this program started has really infused into the businesses in our neighborhood here to take part in this. I work very closely with Maple Leaf Marines, who I'm sure you know have installed at their own cost in their marinas these units, and I believe will continue to do it. So I think we set a good example by being a part of this program and encouraging other businesses within our township to take the initiative to get involved and absorb some of the costs at their own facilities. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ruchek, and that's really helpful information. Actually, I'm not sure that I did know that. So I'm going to reach out to them and see if they want to be part of the data capture. That's excellent.
Councilor Yanko.
A couple of questions. I'm from the Inland Lake community, and I'm just wondering if there's any studies or activity going on in any of the inland lakes, even in Ontario in general, or is it just basically looking at the larger Georgian Bay? That's the first question. And the second question is that if we do approve a $15,000 budget, how is that $15,000 going to be used?
Well, the first question on inland lakes, I don't know, but I will research it and come back to you. The second question about how that's allocated, I believe the breakdown was $8,000 for the microfiber study, and that's to help generate materials that will educate people and do presentations and send out literature and work social media and everything else to continue the education program, as well as to, when the study's finished, to print off copies of that, perhaps to you, and share it with other different political and municipal stakeholders. And then the other two programs were $3,500 each for the specifics that I mentioned. Does that help you, or would you like some more information?
Well, I just thought it's nice to know how our money is being spent. Like obviously for Phragmites, we know how that's being spent, but I just wondered about the $15,000. I guess one question that came up: have you ever analyzed any sediments to find out historical accumulations of plastics in the layering of sediments?
I know from listening to so many different webinars on microfibers that there are studies out there that are finding microfibers in the sediments for sure. So I will find some of those specific ones and send them to you, but they are definitely being found in the sediments. Historically, that's really interesting. I'll have to go back. I'm not sure people were looking for that kind of thing, but I'll have to go back to the even the studies I think we did with the Georgian Bay Township, the paleolimnological, that's a mouthful, studies that we did with you to see if there's a historical record of that kind of thing. That's interesting. I'll look into that.
I'll quickly touch on that as well. So the Perry Sound Divert and Capture program is closely with the Rockman Lab, and one of our partners, Sam Athey, she traveled to the Arctic and was doing ice core samples, specifically looking for gene fiber. So when you do an ice core sample, you do exactly see it over the years, and it's in the most recent years that she is seeing a lot of these gene fibers identified in these ice core samples. And that's not from Arctic communities, that's from evaporation over the ocean from the Great Lakes, and then through the currents, precipitation over the Arctic sea ice. So we are seeing that. We can send you some of her studies and her results, but there has been some in the ice core samples in the Arctic from our direct partners. It's very disturbing to see over the past few years how more common it is.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions related more to the first element, the microfiber plastic pollution. So the examples that you provided to us were studies related to municipal wastewater treatment. And we are probably 98, 99% septic system based communities in the township. And I'm wondering, what studies have you done to understand what the impact might be of a filter on a washing machine and its usefulness in that overall stream where you go from house to septic tank to tile bed to ground? And presumably if the septic system has been installed properly, it's 30 meters back from shore. So you get 30 meters of soil before you get to the water. What are the statistics of concern with respect to this septic system environment?
That's an excellent question. And what I can tell you is, funnily enough, these actual commercial options were originally built for septic systems, not so much kind of on the environmental level, but because all these fibers were kind of gumming up the septic and preventing it from working properly. So that's a little interesting tidbit. But we do have an article on how they apply to septic systems. And the one thing is that I know sort of from pump outs is that those are taken to wastewater treatment plants. And what happens is then they just end up in the wastewater treatment plant, and the same thing, the same sort of 1 to 10% gets through into the water. I don't have, and I think that would be a really interesting research question, the specifics around, when it goes through filtering and soil, but I have seen some studies where some of these microfibers, right, are or they're starting to look at it, what is the danger of it ending up in the soil and the sediment even. So I hope that answers part of your question, but I think there's an interesting research question in there that probably hasn't been answered, but I will look into that. But the reality is those that are getting pumped out end up in the wastewater treatment plants, and the same 1 to 10% get out into the water.
Thank you for that. I will offer that after you brought this to our attention last year, I bought one. I haven't hooked it up yet, but I at least have it. So that's part way to the process of using it. Thank you.
That is amazing. That's really great. And maybe afterwards, Brooke, who's like an expert because she's installed these on so many people, if you ever want some help and sort of like some clues to installing, I'm sure she'd be happy to help you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other hands raised at this point, so I'm going to say thank you very much, both Ms. Sargent and Ms. Harrison, for your presentations. It's obviously greatly appreciated and very, very interesting for council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, council. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. And somewhere here I have a resolution. There we go. The resolution that I have in front of me currently reads, moved by Councillor Wojcik, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that council adopts the consent agenda of November 10, 2020 as amended to remove item 5G, Honey Harbor Waterfront Plan Update. And the recommendations contained in the Waste Management Committee resolutions of October 8, 2020 and the Honey Harbor CAG resolutions of October 27, 2020 be adopted. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Once I get through the items we are skipping. Then we have be it resolved that council adopts the regular agenda of November 10, 2020 as, I believe it's amended.
Sorry, Your Worship, I believe the Honey Harbor Waterfront Plan update on page 12 is to be discussed at this time.
Okay, and so that would be, we want to do that before the regular agenda is what you're suggesting.
Yes, please.
and that would be 5G that so that would probably be that we hand the screen to Ms. Schneier.
I'm here, Your Worship, but I think that we have a frozen photo.
Well, at this point, we have nothing actually from you, a blank screen.
We do have your voice though, so that's okay.
Well, there we go. If you can give me a second, Your Worship, I'll see if I can figure it out. It could be because I was on a Teams meeting this morning. Oh, hey.
There.
Can you see me now?
Yes, we do.
Thank you, for Worship, for the opportunity to speak. This is a report that we wrote on the consent agenda to give Council an update of what happened in the advisory meeting last week. And I believe that there is some discussion that you'd like to have about it. So did you want to give me some direction as to what you'd like to talk about?
Councillors, why don't we take the approach of, I believe it was Councillor Hazelton that asked for this item, and perhaps Councillor Cooper. Gentlemen, if you, okay, is it my imagination or did we lose Councillor Hazelton?
He just disappeared. He's having power issues at his house.
Oh, he's back. Councillors Hazelton and Cooper, I believe the two of you were the ones that asked this be pulled for further discussion. So perhaps if either of you have some questions for Ms. Schneier, we could do it that way. Councillor Hazelton, you want to lead off?
Sure, and I'll just apologize. Somehow my internet service provider is having hiccups this morning and knocking me off. So I guess the first thing that I wanted to highlight of a concern that I have is one of the paragraphs in the report that basically says, as I understand it, is the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Club trail maps doesn't include the trails that have been used by the community forever. And for some reason, that was a reason for some of the placement of rocks and other things along the way there, and now a concern for not damaging that pathway. And yet that was a clear thing communicated even before the project started. Not only was there a snowmobile path that needed to be respected for the community, but there was also a previous use of the roadway and parking on the end. So I guess I'm a little concerned that it appears from the report that we didn't know about it, and yet we certainly did. And then the other thing that I'm concerned about, just purely from a report standpoint, is we know that the license of occupation application is a municipal process, but although I'm not able to be a part of the Honey Harbor Community Advisory Group, I did sit on the Community Advisory Group meeting, and I think I heard pretty much everyone say that they are being looked on by the community to be providing guidance on matters that relate to this Honey Harbor Waterfront Plan, and that they all seemed to want to be offered the opportunity to provide their opinions on any of these kinds of developments. And yet we dismiss that by saying that it's none of their business. So I'm very concerned that we have first created this advisory group that seems to be interested in bringing community opinions, and again, most of the surrounding commercial interests of that property are on the advisory group. So they're all interested in offering comment, but we're now telling them that it's none of their business. So from a report standpoint, I have those two comments. And then I forwarded on a letter that is come to me by one of the local residents, and I forwarded that on to the rest of you on council. And I guess when I read the letter, I get very concerned again that the communications to this very small but very important community don't appear to be where they seem to think that they should be. And so I just want us to be aware, very aware, that the community are reaching out, the community are expressing concern, and the Honey Harbor CAG are reaching out and expressing concern. And my concern is that this report seems to dismiss the relevance of those concerns, and therefore, as a councillor who is trying to represent his community, that causes me great concern.
Okay, Commissioner, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. We would like to make sure that we clarify that we did not tell the community advisory group it was none of their business. We wouldn't use that language in a community capacity because we would like to encourage comment from anybody throughout the entire process. We've always been open to having conversations with residents and advisory group members, and we've encouraged our advisory group members to come back to meetings having vetted conversations with the residents in their area, as we, in the terms of reference, do identify that a community advisory group member is to represent a group of people. And so we always encourage them, once they get the agenda, to go out to their fellow residents and friends and find out and get feedback on items. And we have used that approach throughout the entire community advisory group meetings. It's been very relevant for us when some of the members of the advisory group are marina owners, business owners, residents, and people that just have a general interest in the community. So I would definitely take exception to the fact that we do not use language like it's none of their business. We did reach out last night to a woman by the name of Tina, who Councillor Hazelton is referencing in a letter. She has identified that she feels that she was not made aware of the project and changes in the project. So it's difficult to make sure that we capture every residence during a process like this. I am not clear, and I did tell Tina that I am not clear what the process is for a application for a dock, as it is outside of the municipal jurisdiction. We did have some feedback during that process, so there has been some circulation of the information, but I'm not clear how Tina may or may not have gotten that information. So I said that we would research that and get back to her. The conversation last night was probably narrowed down to a couple of items. Her concern about the communication in the project, but she did identify that she did receive information in her tax bill. She is aware of the information on the website, and her concern was about the changes in the dock design and the number of slips that are going to be available at the Honey Harbor waterfront project. And we said that we would bring her letter forward to the next advisory group meeting, Your Worship, and then be able to provide her back some feedback, as well as make sure that she's aware of the Zoom link for that meeting so that she can get a little bit more educated on what is happening and where. With respect to Councillor Hazelton's comments about the OFSC trail, it's relevant to make sure that we know that, because there have been some habits that have happened for the Honey Harbor waterfront promenade that were not appropriate in terms of people parking and using that public space to leave their cars for the weekend to go to their island community in the wintertime. It has caused our fire department some concern because they're unable to do a turnaround at the end of Delawanna Road, the municipal-owned Delawanna Road, because of the parking. So we have been working with those residents to relocate them. It's not a municipal responsibility to provide free parking for people to access their island communities. And the same would apply with the OFSC trail. It's not a municipal responsibility to take on the risk associated to allowing snowmobiles to go to and around the promenade. It's my understanding, and Brad can speak to a little bit better, when the residents have met with the people that are associated with the snowmobile trail, it's one specific area close to the beach, the community parkette, that is the on-off location for a non-trailed access point. So it's a difficult spot for us to be in. We definitely don't want snowmobilers to be in any way harmed because of construction that happened in between their seasons that they may not have been aware of because they might not be familiar with the project. They may not be familiar with the area. They might be following the advice of a local person as opposed to staying on the OFSC trail. So I believe that Brad is navigating that piece. But it's important to articulate that it is not on the trail, so therefore it's difficult to mass communicate a change in the terrain when it's not being advocated by a larger organization like the OFSC. And the next, no, I think that's all I need to say about that, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Can I have a follow-up?
And I also see Mr. Sokash. So I think Councilor Hazelton and Mr. Sokash in that order, please.
I would want to caution us to not hang our hats on an OFSC trail designation. There are lots and lots of trails in the Honey Harbor area that are not official OFSC trails, but are regular use trails, just like there are on the other lakes in our community. And so the fact that it's not an official trail, but it is officially being used by significant numbers in our community. And we saw this problem last year when we put, when blocks or rocks were put in that area and created hazards to the local snowmobile traffic. I guess my concern is when I read the report, and I read that, because it's not an official marked SFSC trail, that perhaps is not important. But this is really where, before we do something, we should be ensuring that, first of all, the CAG is aware that what we are going to be doing is going to be done, and that, not just are we making it perhaps more attractive along that shoreline, but where there is an existing use, unless that existing use is illegal, and I get it with the fire issues on the roadway, but there, as I say, there are all kinds of trails in our community that are not official snowmobile club trails, and the community will tell us where they are if we ask. My concern is that, number one, if we didn't know it, then we didn't ask. And number two, if we didn't know it and we think that the snowmobile club are the source of these things, then we've missed things on that front as well. So the community reach out to me when these kinds of things happen, and I want to make sure that I'm communicating to the rest of township staff of these kinds of concerns. Thank you.
I'm just going to add before Mr. Sokash speaks, the last time I was at the site, I saw members of the community who I'm sure included folks that have been communicating with you, Councillor Hazelton, in active conversation with Mr. Sokash with regards to snowmobiling. Mr. Sokash.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, as you noted, after the last CAG meeting, I had a meeting on site with a couple of the members of the CAG, one who has to access his property with a snowmobile throughout the winter, and another one who was interested, and then a third person showed up as well as a frequent snowmobiler. We looked at different options for accessing the ice, as well as possible impediments that could be dangerous for snowmobilers. And we came up with a solution. We're going to basically fence a portion of the beach, and then feed the snowmobiles through an existing break in the rocks, and then continue to feed them onto the road from there. Another concern they had was the new docks. Many snowmobilers may not even be aware that they're there. So once they're covered with snow, they could have a horrible surprise as they're driving through. So we're going to put delineators at the end of the docks. We've ordered about 20 of them. They should be in this week, and in the next month or so, they'll be installed.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, I believe you also expressed concern on this topic. Did you want to add anything further to the conversation?
Yes, just I don't know necessarily I'm going to get an answer on this, but I am concerned about navigational issues, and we just heard during the winter there could be some as it pertains to the significant intensification of moorage in this bay. And I'm concerned about some of the things that I've seen over the last few months from residents in the area, people that live on this bay, and some concerns about the moorage, and a concern that there may be additional moorage added to satisfy the owner of the Delawana. So I just want to remind us that even though Transport Canada, I believe, is responsible for allowing such dockage, we've already learned outside of Camp Queen Elizabeth that a mooring buoy has been allowed by Transport Canada that is going to be a navigational hazard, and I consider that these docks that are in the area and any additional ones are going to potentially be a navigational hazard, and we really need to be very much aware of that. It would be most unfortunate to see accidents occur when there's very little space between some of the docks, especially as you enter into the bay, and as it narrows, it's becoming even more intense because the space between one shore and the other is less, and lots of docks. So I caution us on that in that regard. Thank you.
I'm going to respond to that by saying that we've received input from a number of people with their suggestions on whether or not there are any further docks, and if so, how many, where, how, et cetera, and that's all being considered. But I will say at this point, there are 0 concrete plans for additional docks. There are ideas about additional docks. There's suggestions, but at this point, no additional docks have been designed and approved, and certainly the community input is being carefully considered. Councillor Jarvis.
Could I just comment briefly? And I'm delighted to hear that is that we're hearing from others as to what they might or might not like to have. I'm simply saying, regardless, we are inclined often to allow more than we should, and so I'm saying let's be really careful when it pertains to safety. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you, Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, my question to Jennifer really is one a matter of just process, and maybe I need a reminder on this. Care of Councillor Hazelton, I'm looking at the documentation that was provided early on in the process, going back to February 15, showing that a dock system that's significantly different than what's actually been put in place. Not that I'm upset about it in some senses, but it does. I do have to agree with the homeowner that was concerned about the intensification of dock spaces in this area, and I'm wondering if, and I may be missing a stage in this, and that's all I'm getting at here is we've gone from an L-shaped dock that had what did it have? Seven fingers off it to 2 docks now that all have significantly more in the end. And I'm just wondering if there was a step in there that's just not been included here, or how was the CAG, I guess, informed of all this when it changed? I know it was draft initially, so I may be missing something. If you could help, that'd be great.
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Jarvis, this is a really good point that I brought forward with Tina last night, or Ms. Shaw. I wanted to clarify that when we initially had a concept of the document that's on our website, we had hoped that it wouldn't be a straight out dock as it is turning out to be. We were looking for that hard left if you're looking at it from the shoreline. But bathymetry is the study of movement of water, including the depth and flow. And when the bathymetry report came back, it was identified that an L-shaped dock would not be successful at that location. It was better to have fingers straight out. And so the design was brought back to the advisory committee in before the tender process to ensure that their eyes were on the document and that we could get feedback. And we were also advised that there was room for 2 docks based on our preliminary drawing of 1, and was it beneficial for the community to add more docking. And unanimously at the advisory group, it was identified that more docking was needed, as there is a constant problem in Churches Bay with docks, depth of water, especially during stop the drop. Although that was years ago, it's still reminiscent in a lot of seasonal residents' mind that if we were to be able to put more docks out available to the public at the Honey Harbor waterfront, during the Honey Harbor waterfront plan construction, it would benefit the community. We did get feedback also from the Hive that although Lauren loves to have people walk through her parking lot to get to the LCBO, it does cause problems for her as well, because it makes an assumption about public washrooms, and it makes an assumption about just ordinary seasonal residents versus guests of the Hive using the docking, and this will help alleviate some of the problems. We also heard from the Flemings that they were experiencing people arriving at their docks not clear on whether it was public or not. We've assisted them this year with some signage to identify that it's not a private dock, but it sort of showed that what the CAG was telling to us when we brought these documents forward is true, that it's a very busy bay and people are looking for a place to dock their boats. So it was unanimous that the advisory group to approve the pre-tender documents. And that's why they're being constructed the way they are. Does that help fill that gap?
It helps me. Thank you very much, Jim.
Went mute. Thank you very much. The resolution I have in front of me is moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that Council receives the October 27th, 2020 Honey Harbor CAG resolutions. That's not the one I want, is it? I think. I apologize. Did I get the wrong one? I want the one. There is one in here about receive the sustainability report. Here, I apologize. Now I have the right one in front of me. Moved by Councillor Wayanko, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved that Council accepts Sustainability Report 2020-09, the Honey Harbor Waterfront Plan update for information purposes only. All those in favor? Thank you very much. I think we had some good discussion on that, and I apologize for trying to read the wrong resolution. So now, if everybody's ready to go for a little longer, we're going to adopt the regular agenda. And it's moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved, the Council adopts the regular agenda of November 10th, 2020 as amended by the addition of item 10B in regards to council remuneration. Are there any other changes or additions that anyone would like to see? All those in favor? And that is carried. And the first item on the regular agenda is everybody gets to talk about what they did the past month. And I'm going to go in reverse order from last month, or if you will, reverse alphabetical order. So Councillor Wienko, you're up first.
Okay, so that's since October. On the 15th of October, I attended pretty well a day-long meeting with the SSEA board, going over the 2021 budget and a number of other items. And as you probably noticed, I've been sending quite a bit of information out on the SSEA, so you should be fairly updated on what they're doing. On the evening of the 21st of October, a couple of us, I guess, attended the 6 Mile Lake annual AGM via Zoom, which was somewhat contentious, but it was actually well done. We had a number of resolutions to amend, and also a whole new slate of members for the board, and that was done, and it was actually quite well done on Zoom. And I've had a number of questions and working with the district and a few individuals on the waste issue in the township, and a couple on water quality, and that's about it.
All right, thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
You should be patient. I'm working off two separate calendars here, care of new phones, which is always good fun. Library board was back on the 19th of October. Nothing contentious there, just ongoing issues, obviously, with the Honey Harbor Library and the frustration expressed with the lack of movement forward on getting access to that building, which is really, really annoying. But that's just the way things go when you've got, I guess, 3 different levels of red tape to weed through to get things going properly. Obviously, library circulation is down significantly for obvious reasons, but there was some mild surprises in a good way for things like the McTier and the Port Severn libraries. So considering we're a small community with 3 active libraries, it's amazing to see how active things can be even in a COVID environment. I did the water level seminar back on the 24th. That was very enlightening. Unfortunately, I didn't answer any specific questions, but it was intriguing to hear all the different points of view on where what the causes are for our water level fluctuation and what possibly is going to happen down the road, which is, of course, very much as much speculation as anything else. But very, very good and well done seminar. And then since then, I had the marvelous opportunity of actually missing the SegBay meeting because I put it on the wrong date. So I totally missed the last SegBay meeting. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. So since October, I too have attended the library meeting, and as it relates to formal meetings like that, I think that's the only formal. Well, no, I attended the Honey Harbor CAG meeting. I've had several opportunities, or a couple of opportunities to have more in-depth discussions with staff, which have been very helpful. I've had a ton of community interactions related to a lot of the issues that we have been talking about over the last several months, and perhaps more recently. And sadly, cottage close-up came and went, and so now cottage season is over for another year. But kind of the good news is I had an opportunity last week to have a giant celebration with lots of happiness based on the fact that I have American citizens in my family. So all is good there. Thank you.
Wow, he dares a comment on U.S. politics. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I'll stay away from that one. Fairly quiet month for me, just correspondence with my constituents on various matters, including our garbage issues and so on. And also staying in touch with our fellow councillors on some of the things that they've been doing and information being fed through. So all in all, it was a fairly quiet month for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Relatively quiet month, a busy closing cottages and all of the things that have been referenced here. Attended by Zoom my council meetings at the district, both on the 19th and the 22nd. And a lot of community input on matters that are continuing to be concerning, whether it's a solid waste issue, planning and planning approvals. It's always active in those areas. And I guess my only other comment is that I enjoyed a very lovely bottle of French champagne celebrating what Councillor Hazelton was remarking about in the US. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bocek, you're last this time of the councillors.
Thank you. Fairly busy month for myself. Firstly, I met with a member of the ownership group of a company called Severn Marina, which is based in Port Severn, used to be the old Orville King Marina, about future development on that property. Very enlightening to have a conversation with them on their future plans. Met with a group of locals here in Port Severn about the future development of a dog run at the Baxter Ward Community Center, and the positive direction that I think that's going to be heading in. Spoke with the president and members of the Moore Point Association about the ongoing issues with HH Incorporated and the Macy's Bay water treatment system. Of course, being that most of it's in closed session, there's not a whole lot to talk about, but certainly lent my ear to the folks and heard all of their concerns. Addressed through our CAO and I guess we call it emergency services, about bylaw issues that have affected the residents on Hillside Drive. Seem to be going down a right path there with bylaw, working on that. Met with the group from Parks Canada about the ongoing construction and the completion of the dam and the bridge in Port Severn, on time estimates of when they figure they will wrap up and things will be back open again. Looks very positive to be on their newest schedule, not their original schedule, but their newest schedule. So hopefully we'll see some traffic through Port Severn in the near future. I, as some other councillors did, attended the AGM for 6 Mile Lake. It was a Zoom AGM with input from members of the community, whether they are, surprisingly enough, whether they were members of the 6 Mile Lake Ratepayers Association or the Cottage Association. They were both welcome to take part and comment, which was quite enlightening. I did speak to staff on some of the concerns that came out of the 6 Mile Lake AGM, and responded to questions from their newly elected or re-elected president, Frank Boddy, and hopefully answered all his questions and concern. Staff were very gracious in contacting Frank and updating him on his questions to do with staff. I met with our operations director, which I do most months previous to our council meetings, discuss things like snow plowing, the Pratt Road culvert, which is an ongoing item of mine, opening of ice rinks, or how we're going to, or if we're going to open up the outdoor ice rinks. And I want to thank Brad for his time, and I think our meetings are very constructive. I did meet with some residents in Honey Harbor about access to Georgian Bay in the snowmobile season. After reading, we had an agenda item about the parkette at the end of Honey Harbor Road. They took me around and showed me the other access points that they use to get onto the bay. And I'm surprised to see how many access points there was onto Lily Pond, onto the some of the outer bays, Churches Bay. There's a small piece that goes between the Delawana Inn and the boat club, which they use for access, and heard their concerns. And there is concerns there about the access being limited going into where the new docks are going. So busy month for. Yep, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. On my list, October 16th, attended a committee of adjustment meeting here. And then in the afternoon, an ice cap meeting up in near Perry Sound. Interestingly enough, both those meetings were in-person meetings, which is a little bit unusual. So, in large rooms with a few people spread out, you almost have to shout to hear each other. But it's interesting to be in live person meetings when you're so used to doing everything by Zoom now. Anyway, kind of miss those some of the time. October 19th, the district meeting, of course. On the 20th, had a nice meeting with a couple of members of the Waste Committee and individual conversation, which I found very interesting. On the 21st, Wednesday morning, I was doing 2 meetings at once. That's one of the advantages of being in an electronic world, because that was my Board of Health meeting, but also the EPW group of district had their meeting in which they were talking about a report, the waste management report that they were filing for the year. And I found it very interesting, and I believe very significant, was that instead of referring to closing bin sites, they refer to transitioning bin sites. And I think that's a very key difference, that they're now beginning to understand that we're not, the messaging as well as the intent isn't to close every bin site that exists, but rather to transition them into something that the province will accept. And I think I was very glad to hear that. Also met that day with Jessica and then with the Finance Committee. And that evening was a 6 Mile Lake AGM, which I attended electronically. That was a very long day, but I thought that meeting went relatively well, and given the challenges that they were facing. On the 24th, as I think Councillor Jarvis already mentioned, the GBA, GBF water levels seminar. I found that interesting in some of the history and perspective they were providing. And that evening, the Georgian Bay Land Trust held their auction, their annual auction electronically this year, and was actually financially a great success. A lot more people attending and a lot more people bidding, and a lot fewer expenses. So it was a great success for them. Unfortunately, later that weekend, my mother-in-law passed away, which means now my daughters have lost all 3 grandmothers within 7 months. So it's not been a good year. On the 27th, I attended the Honey Harbor CAG meeting, and I think that was a meeting that was a bit overdue, due to COVID and everything else. But I think we did a lot of catching up, and I considered it quite an informative meeting. On the 28th, our CEO and I met with a couple of people from the district in regards to waste, and I think it was a very positive meeting. We didn't have any direct information coming out of that, but rather it's just talking about the challenges and what we want to see. And I think we were, Ms. Gumby will probably respond herself, but I think we were very well heard, and I'm hoping that will continue to improve communication in the future. In the 29th, I met with Mr. Sokash and the Biosphere folk in regards to creating a community garden here next year, and I think that's a great idea for our area. November 3rd, the Indigenous Leadership Table met for the first time in basically a year, because we were supposed to have had a meeting last spring that actually our township was going to host at the Baxter Ward Community Center, but for COVID reasons, it was postponed. And so we had an electronic gathering on November 3rd. Land Trust Board meeting that day. On the 4th, met with my fellow mayors and the chair of the district in a municipal modernization meeting. And I found that to be actually surprisingly successful, in that we had very positive conversation. not only confirming the obvious, and that is that seasonal residents are actually real people and are full people as opposed to half people and things like that. But we also were having a serious discussion about reducing the size of council from 22 members as it currently is down to 12. And I was quite impressed with that conversation simply because it went along the lines of every municipality would have 2 representatives, whether you're a town or a township. And I think this is and to be fair, it was Braden Smith who first brought up that idea. I know there's been lots of discussions in the background, but he brought it up in the meeting, and we're going to be meeting again on Thursday to go further with these discussions. But I think that actually this committee is now making progress, and I think to have a potential council of 12 with the towns and municipalities, townships all equally represented, I think is a key step in the right direction. Lots of things have to be worked out, but I was quite impressed with that meeting. On the 5th, I met with a couple of our staff members as well as Adrian Conrad from the Delawan to talk about challenges going forward, and I think that was a positive meeting. Nothing I'll call it concluded, other than an update on conversations that should have been had. And outside of that, a whole list of conversations, whether they be rarely in person, occasional in person, electronically, telephone, email, lots of constituents with lots of concerns and suggestions. And I think the input is greatly appreciated. And that was my month. Ms. Gunby? Oh, Councilor Yanko, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the modernization committee. I like the idea of going to 12 or 14 or whatever, so we get some kind of equality involved in final decisions. But I just want to know, is there a deadline for the final decision on this? Because obviously, if the district council is going to be reduced in size and our contribution to that will be reduced, we ourselves, and I guess every municipality, will have to take a look at their mix also. So there would have to be a review at the lower tier too, and that's all got to be done, I believe, by the end of next year. So is that type of schedule being considered?
I can only speak partially to that, and I'm sure our clerk will jump in when I make mistakes. Initially, there are a couple of deadlines. One deadline is we were supposed to report to the provincial government, I don't know if it was the end of this month or sometime before Christmas anyway, as to what our plans were. We're going to ask for an extension to flesh them out a little bit, and we're hopeful we'll get that. But secondly, any changes that are being proposed would be proposed to take place in time for the next election, which of course is 2 years from now. And so, yes, within about a year, we should have everything in place so each municipality can then decide how they are going to elect their 2 representatives. The suggestion so far is that 2 would be elected at large. 1 would be the mayor, and then there would also be a second district councillor elected, if you will, at large from the entire municipality, as opposed to now, of course, we have our 2 district councillors representing the east and the west of the township. Ms. Way, is that what
But there would need to be a reduction in our size from 7 down to 6.
That'd be one possibility that we'd have to discuss. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
So as long as you have time to do that, that's what I'm considering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why we're meeting tomorrow, less than 2 weeks after we last met. You're nodding your head.
Yeah, you summed it up quite nicely. I don't want to start a debate today. A report will be coming forward in December. The area municipality clerks have been involved with the district through this process, and we were all on the last modernization municipality committee through the district. So we are involved. There is a timeline. December 10th is the official deadline from the province, which isn't going to be met, which is why we're asking for an extension, or the district will be asking for an extension. Each area municipality will be impacted slightly differently depending on their current council makeup, because everyone's kind of has a different approach at this point in time. But some of those options will be coming forward for how that will impact Georgian Bay directly.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
I just wanted to comment that I'm delighted to hear that this is coming forward in December. I think it would be very useful to get to you, Mayor, to have feedback from the council on this concept. Generally speaking, I think we'd all agree that we may have too many on the district council. The challenge for the township of Georgian Bay is how unique Georgian Bay is, and how the interests of some communities are very different from others. So that is a significant challenge for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there will be a public meeting that the district is hosting. That's yet to be scheduled. So
if I could,
lots more to be done and to be discussed.
If I could just comment, what I was not really referring to as a district public meeting, but I think our council and our community need to comment locally on this issue. So I think
there will be opportunity.
There will be, yeah. It's in the works.
Ms. Gunby, thank you for your patience.
You know, I don't have much of it lately. So you're welcome. I don't have much to report today, Council, other than I just wanted to advise that I do still meet weekly with Dr. Charles Gardner and the area CAOs in Simcoe, Muskoka. And I do think that Councillor Bocek specifically will appreciate this comment, with the fact that Dr. Gardner has been asked to divide the numbers when he reports between Simcoe and Muskoka, because he focuses on the number as a whole. But as Brian Bocek has stated, that I've read, that Muskoka has 0 and Simcoe has all the numbers. I might be off by 1 or 2, but so we're hoping that he can divide them, because if Muskoka is put in with Simcoe when it comes to orders and restrictions, but we don't have any cases, it doesn't really seem fair in that generality. So that's what we're hoping for. And also Dr. Gardner still recommends that the office remains closed to the public and for all of staff. So until he supports us opening, I do not support us opening at this time.
And further to that, Councillor Bocek, I do know that a number of other mayors and individuals in Muskoka have been making the same case. He's heard it from more than a few sources.
And he has stated, sorry to interrupt, Your Worship, he has stated that he's taking it to his provincial contacts to see how they can go about doing that.
Okay. Staff reports. And before we start the staff reports, I'm going to propose to council, just for a matter of, I'll call it convenience, but also because of situations, I'm going to recommend that we do closed session starting at 1 o'clock. And the reason I'm recommending that is because it's been recommended to me by those who know that we have a couple of people who would like to join us, basically legal advice. And so 1 o'clock for closed session. And so I'm going to suggest we go through staff reports until we get to about, a little after 12:15, and then break for lunch and rejoin at 1 o'clock with closed session and whatever's left over then after that. And so if anybody is wanting a bio break, say it now, or we'll just go on with staff reports as long as we can. I'm not seeing any responses other than a positive thumbs up. So let's move on. And we have a couple of reports from Ms. Schneier, starting with the Venture Muskoka report.
Oh, I see it's frozen again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This Venture Muskoka report is it's a joint collaborative effort with all 6 area economic development officers or directors of sustainability or managers of economic development, however each of them are named. And it's a collaborative storytelling initiative that receives some funding from Explorers Edge. It's a total $10,000 project, and our contribution to it is $500 because we are a township with a smaller budget. So I'm just coming forward to council today with that report, asking if you can approve the $500 spend so that we can participate in this storytelling exercise that exists on venturemuskoka.ca. We're going to be using some of our previous content, and then we're going to be creating some new content under the pillars of labor force, broadband, as well as investment attraction in Muskoka as a collaborative. So if there's any questions to the report, I'll be happy to answer them.
Perhaps it'll be helpful if I read the resolution, and then if there's any questions, we'll take them before we decide whether or not to vote in favor. The resolution moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved that Council directs staff to participate in the partnership between Venture Muskoka and Explorers Edge to write and/or redistribute existing content related to organizational goals and share the Muskoka story. And that staff be permitted to contribute $500 for 2020, which can be drawn from the membership account in the 2020 budget. And that Venture Muskoka be advised that they are required to submit a funding request in line with the annual budget process. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Can you imagine if every item that we discussed was that straightforward?
That'd be excellent.
All right. Strategic plan. I'm willing to bet this won't be quite as quick. Ms. Schneider.
Well, Your Worship, this is drawn from an exercise that happened shortly after you all came into office. We did bring this to Committee of the Whole, but for, I think, reasons related to the change in the CAO and COVID, we've never really been able to highlight these priorities. They came from an exercise, if you can recall, that we did in council chambers. And so I present to you today the strategic plan based on your feedback. However, staff are asking whether or not you would consider adding 2 additional items to the strategic planning document, and that is to encourage a more diverse workplace by intentionally advertising with agencies that support groups that are not accessing our files to traditional means. And then the second one is to be more cognizant and respectful of the reconciliation process with respect to First Nations and including them in much more conversations that perhaps they should have been involved in the past. So it's sort of like, Your Worship, staff are coming to you asking you if you can add these 2 into your strategic plan.
Thank you. Council. Who would like to make any comments, suggestions, criticisms? Okay, I will start. I'm wondering whether in you're adding diversity and First Nations. I'm wondering if we should also add something about climate change. And the reason I say that is that we earlier this year declared a climate emergency. We wanted to see that climate was addressed in many of the staff reports going forward. And I think that's important. I mean, we definitely talk about natural environment, but I think we should expand that to include climate change and response to the climate change. That's my suggestion for an extra point. Ms. Schneider.
Your Worship, we can easily do that by just adding a line that suggests that we adopt the recommendations in the climate action plan that was provided to us by the SS Sustainable Severn Sound. There are 17 actionable items that staff are starting to use in reports, which you'll see later today. If we add that as an item in your strategic planning, it'll allow us to be able to put a little bit more weight to that document and support climate change. If that's okay with you. It's just a good solution because it's an already existing document that you've adopted.
Yeah, no, I think that's important that we note that, especially given the resolution that we had. I can't remember if it was last March or when we did it, but or maybe it's even a year ago now. But I think it's important that we have that listed. Council, any other input? Councillor Jarvis.
I really don't have much input. I did go through this and I'm really happy to see the document in front of us. I will admit to have not, I figured that climate change would have been part, just sort of understood within the document itself, but I appreciate it being highlighted separately as part of this. I appreciate what's being put before us, and obviously I'm a strong supporter.
I'm muted, so you didn't even hear me say okay. I'll read the resolution as it currently exists with my amendment. Moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved that Council accept the Strategic Plan 2020-2022 as a guiding document for the remainder of this term of Council. And the Council accepts this highlight sheet as a consolidated document derived from the Strategic Plan 2020-2022. And I'm going to say accepts with the changes that we're suggesting. And the Council recommend to staff to continue to pursue the goals set out within this document as a continued priority for the remainder of the term of this Council. And the Council directs staff to invest greater attention and care to fostering a diverse workplace and continuing to develop relationships with our First Nation communities and addressing climate change. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay. Naturalization project. Mr. Sokash, is that you?
Thank you, Your Worship. Council may recall a year ago, we brought forward a report for looking for direction on a pilot study for naturalization of several areas of township property. There were 4 that were approved to naturalize, and basically that just meant stopping cutting the grass. We were hoping to do some plantings as well, but with COVID that didn't happen. 2 of the sites, council later directed that we begin maintaining them as we had historically, so cutting the grass, whippersnippering. Those 2 sites are in front of the community services building as well as a park in Port Severn. The other 2 sites, which were the MacTier Arena and the MacTier Library, continue to be naturalized through the year. So this is a report just summarizing what we've done. We're not suggesting that we do any additional properties in the coming year. We're hoping to do some plantings at the MacTier Library and possibly at the arena, although there's limited space there, and then come back around this time next year to seek direction whether or not council wishes for us to look at additional properties or what they would like us to do. We're also, we've been also speaking with Georgian Bay Forever, I believe, for about establishing some additional gardens, both at the community services building as well as the other park in Port Severn. And hopefully that will proceed, and we'll have something to bring to council in the spring.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bocek.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Brad. Just a few questions and maybe a comment. The gardens that we're thinking about doing on township property, community gardens, they would be of the vegetable nature, I would imagine, for people that live in villas and condos and don't have accessibility for land to grow vegetables, etc. Am I on the right vein here?
Possibly. There's 2 different gardens I think that we're speaking to. There's the vegetable gardens that we've met with Georgian Bay Forever that we're hopefully bringing to council in December or January for in front of the community services building. But there's also a naturalization garden that would have native species and plants and things like that. Okay, yeah, that was my understanding. So there'd be a combination of wildflowers and vegetable gardens. We can talk about the semantics of it later. Who will have accessibility to it, if there's any cost involved and everything else. I'm sure that'll all come back in the spring. One word of caution you may want to include in your documents is that some people may think this is an opportunity to grow 4 plants that are of their favorite type, and maybe they should be limited and excluded from your gardening program. I'll take that under advisement. Thank you.
Just one minor correction, Brad, it was the Georgian Bay Biosphere, not Georgian Bay Forever in regard to the garden project.
I think every time I've gotten them mixed up when I've spoken about them. Thank you for helping me out there.
Councillor Jarvis.
was going to comment that those 4 plants Brian was referring to, that's an income opportunity, is it not? Anyway, I'd like to applaud Brad on his choice of attire because he's easy to see that way, and I think that's great. I'm wondering if any consideration in the naturalization aspect of things has been given to planting trees in front of the services building, and what has come of that?
Through the mayor, it sounds to me like you're referring to some previous direction that I don't recall.
No, this is strictly just come to mind as we were speaking here. As a matter of fact, when I first saw your report, I thought, well, that's a pretty big expanse of land between the road and the building, and I know what we tried to do became a bit of a bit unpleasant for some people in the area who were there regularly. And I'm just curious. I mean, have trees been considered at all?
Through the mayor, there are some trees planted there. They don't do well. I think in my 5 years here, we've cut down 3 of them because they've died. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. Right now, we're looking at the space for the community gardens.
Sure.
So if it's used for that, it might be used for that. Although they do like shade, so there might be some encouragement there for us to plant some trees.
Yeah. Palm trees probably weren't a good idea in the first place. But anyway, I strongly suggest that we just keep that in mind. There's some good native species that I'm sure that would do well. You're right. Shading is good and bad for community gardens, so placement would be an issue, but I think it's something we should consider.
The resolution in front of me includes a sentence, and that additional properties not be added for the program for 2021. So, Mr. Socash, are you asking that we rule out any other possible naturalization projects next year other than the 2 existing in MacTier?
Through the mayor, yes, your worship, that is what I'm suggesting, partially due to the community feedback, partially because we weren't able to do any plantings in the areas that we naturalized. And I thought it would be best to leave it for another year, hopefully have the opportunity to do some planting so people and council can see what they can look like if with a bit more involvement, and then make a decision next year.
I can't help but share with you that I'm finding this disappointing. I do understand that 2 of your projects were reversed by council, unfortunately, from my perspective, though part of the explanation I accepted. But I hate to see us give up on this project, though I would see this perhaps as a delay, because you do say that you will look for a direction for the 2022 season from council. But I think the more we can naturalize, the better. Is my way of looking at this. So that's the one thing that frustrates me about this, is that you're asking us to tell you not to do anything in 2021. And I just as soon remove that one sentence from the resolution, frankly.
Through the mayor, I don't think that would affect the direction at all, removing it. If you want to.
I'll read the resolution as it currently reads. It's moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that council directs staff to continue with the property naturalization project at the library and arena in MacTier for 2021, and that additional properties not be added to the program for 2021, and that staff report back to council for direction for the 2022 season in the fall or winter of 2021-2022. Councillor Bocek.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with the mayor here. I think the initial rollout of this program didn't work out that well because we didn't get to the stage of planting wildflowers. We just had a bunch of weeds, and it wasn't very appealing. But I wouldn't squash the thoughts of wild gardens, and I might even challenge my fellow councillors to bring to Brad a location in your ward that might be suitable for a wildflower garden. I know I'd love to see wildflowers over at the park, at the Port Severn Park, on the water there. but a controlled garden that is cared for and has a great display of wild flowers where butterflies, bees, etc. can have their will. So, yeah, I would like to see that part of the resolution removed, and maybe we don't do anything in 2021, but let's not put forth an effort to figure out what the best ways of doing it. If we come up with something good, let's move ahead with it. I don't want to squash the ability to do this.
Okay, I see a thumbs up. Councillor Cooper, you were volunteered as the seconder. Would you be open to having that second sentence removed?
I can support that.
Thank you. Okay, we will consider that the friendly amendment then. Any other discussion? Does council require the resolution to be read again? Councillor Rienko.
Maybe Brad, like I'm trying to think of other locations within the township that you might be considering, but I don't think there's a lot outside of the 3 towns or the 3 villages. But if there is, maybe you can indicate that at some point, what other areas do you think that could be done? I can't think of anything else outside of the 3 little villages.
What I could do is in the coming months, bring a report of all the areas where we cut the grass.
Yeah, that would be probably a good start.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? And that has passed. Thank you. Okay. Next report, outdoor rinks.
Thank you, Worship. This is a COVID-related report. Typically, we create 2 outdoor rinks, one in Port Severn at the Baxter Ward and one at Honey Harbor Park, which is beside Honey Harbor Landing. These are used by the community for public skating, pickup hockey, whatever happens out there. They are unregulated, unmonitored. People use them as they wish. The ice is often created by volunteers, and the maintenance is often done by volunteers with some input from township staff. In light of COVID and the many difficulties that could occur by having these rinks, we're suggesting that they not be ice not be put in this year. We're concerned about potential contact tracing, people going out playing tag, body checking, playing hockey, the unmonitored nature of it. The cost, if we were to hire monitors, is, I think, fairly substantial. So we're just seeking direction from council right now.
All right, I apologize. Hit the wrong button. Councillor Bochek.
Thanks for the report, Brad. As you know, as a permanent resident and local resident, it's very key in the wintertime that we have recreational facilities to keep our youth busy. Well, in saying that, maybe keep the adults busy too, because there's not much to do up here and you can get into trouble. We did have a great meeting on Friday, I think it was. And I did mention to you that other small townships are considering reopening or opening their outdoor rink facilities. And I'm just wondering if you were able to contact Tiny Township, as they made an announcement that their 3 outdoor rinks would be open this year. And did you get any input from them as to how they're going to be able to control it?
Through the mayor, I haven't been able to contact Tiny yet. We are having a meeting of all the arena operators this Friday. We typically have them every Friday. The health unit also attends. So it will be on the agenda, and I'm looking to get feedback there. I did go through the Tiny report. Part of it was staff were directed to discuss this proposal with the health unit, and I don't believe that has happened yet, but I speak to the health unit weekly, if not every other week. So I will be discussing that with them as well if they're not at the meeting on Friday.
No, thank you for that. I certainly would like to see every effort made. Of course, health and safety is the #1 concern that we should be focused on as a council. But I think we're starting to see the realization that there, for the most part, is 0 cases of COVID in Muskoka, let alone Port Severn. I think there was 1 in Midland this week, 1 in Tay this week, and that they're both in Simcoe County. So if this resolution is to say we're going to keep the rinks closed, I won't vote in favor of it. But if we're going to continue to discover ways that we possibly could have the rinks remain open, but if they have to close due to COVID reasons, I'm fine with that. But I don't want a resolution worded such that we're not going to open our rinks this winter. I hope you understand the premise behind that.
Thank you. Councillor Bianco.
I keep hitting the wrong button here. I'm having the same problem. I think this is going to be a tough winter for everybody up here in Muskoka. A lot of people are staying up. A lot of kids really can't do much at school these days. I think the idea of trying to open up our outdoor rinks would be helpful for some kind of entertainment for people who are stuck up here and maybe couldn't go south and so on. So I would like to maybe keep this issue open for a while and maybe review options. If Tiny Township going to open up, look at how they're going to supervise their outdoor rinks and maybe come up with a plan for our own outdoor rinks. I don't know how they can be secured and only opened at certain times when the supervision, or everybody has to wear a mask while they're out in the ice, et cetera, But, you know, Muskoka doesn't have a lot of cases, and I don't think our rinks are going to be super spreaders. So I like to have these rinks available to our people. And if it become a problem, we can always close them down. But I think we should try to open them up and see if we can have enhanced security and enhanced health issues in some of these rinks, and just try to be normal.
I try to be normal is really quite a concept for some of individuals, but we're not naming names. Ms. Gunby.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to advise council that I do fully support this report, mainly because, as Mr. Sokach said, it's run by volunteers and it's set up by volunteers. Right now, we are mandated to keep track of everyone who visits our facilities. And if we don't have a dedicated staff member there, we have no way of keeping track. So then we're going against the recommendations of the province. I do understand the points of Councillors Bocek and Mayenko, and you can direct staff to come back in a couple of months or next month with more information from other area municipalities and any sort of results from Mr. Sokach's meetings with the arena operators. But for right now, yeah, I just wanted to outline the reasons why I don't think it's a good idea that we have them open.
Thank you. Councillor Sokach, sorry, Mr. Sokach, followed by Councillor Douglas, followed by Councillor Cooper. That's the hands I've seen so far.
Thank you.
A decrease.
In my discussions with the health unit, they have offered to come to council to discuss this or other matters, and I'd be happy to try and set that up for the next council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I appreciate your efforts on that, Brad, but I think we have quite an outcry from the public to have these arenas opened. You know, like, these are recommendations from the province, but they're not set in stone, and they're not, you know, it might be recommendations, but they're not, like I said, it's not law. So there are other townships, as far as I'm aware, that are doing some of this. And I think that we should make every effort to make sure that we get those arenas open for people. It's a mental health issue. And I certainly have heard an awful lot back from my constituents on this. So in my opinion, if there is something that can be done and you can bring in someone to speak to us next month about it, that's fine, but I'm still of the opinion with the fact that we don't have any, as far as I know, any cases in the Muskokas, and we are very remote. This is achievable. And if it means that we have to put a staff member on it, I think that that's expected by our constituents.
Councillor Cooper.
I just wanted to get clarification from our CAO as to why we already have volunteers involved with this process. Why is it that we can't have volunteers monitor? Why do we have to have staff there?
I'm going to let Mr. Solkach answer that because he deals with the volunteers directly and I don't.
Thank you. Through the mayor, the rinks are, there's not a way to secure the outdoor rinks. So they are used any time of day. People can just drive up or walk up and go on the ice. So when it comes to creating the ice, getting this, shoveling the snow off the ice, things like that, that's where the volunteers come in. The volunteers aren't involved in monitoring the activities on the ice. And well, not impossible. It would be difficult to create a method to restrict access so that there's only access during certain times when we have either staff or monitors available to track who's coming in and who's going out and what's happening on the ice.
Follow up on that, and just to suggest that you know, during the summer months we have volunteers in various recreational programs that monitor and look after things, and they're very capable of doing that. So I would encourage the communities to, if that is required, to expand the responsibilities of certain volunteers to cover off this particular area. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
I'm wondering, Council, if we might choose to defer this item. And the reason I'm saying that is simply because I heard, well, a few reasons. One is definitely resistance. So I don't think it would pass if we called it. But also, Mr. Solkach referred to a number of meetings he probably will have in the next week or two with the health board as well as other municipalities. And we might be able to make a more informed decision next month. Council, would you be in favor of deferring this item for now? I don't know, Ms. Way, if you want me to call a vote or just see these positive thumbs up. Is that adequate for your purposes?
If you're deferring it, yes.
Yeah. So let's defer this. Councillor Jarvis, are you wanting to say something? No. Okay. I'm going to suggest we defer this.
Yes. I'm worried about the, sorry, I don't know, when does the ice normally go in, Brad? Are we delaying? I mean, if we're delaying things, that's fine, but I think there's going to be a reason for why we're delaying things given to the public. I have no problem with a deferral of this actual motion. I'm a keen recreational skater, so I currently sympathize with everybody who's spoken so far about this issue. We're outside. It's probably the best way for people to get exercise, get some, it helps with mental health and not exposing themselves too much to what the rest of the world seems to be dealing with in an area where we've had very few cases of COVID. So and then there's a liability issue, I presume, that somebody can tell us more about that. But my question is, are we okay to defer this as far as Brett is concerned, or is there, and as a result of that, do we need to get something out to the public just to let them know that we're sitting on it for the time being until we have more information? That's all.
Through the mayor, the preparation of the ice is weather dependent. Typically, it's the last couple of weeks of December when things finally get cold enough to put down the ice.
Okay.
The pad has to freeze, so I don't expect that we would be impacting the timing of preparing the ice by deferring this to the next meeting.
Okay.
All right. So let's mark this as deferred, and I'm going to suggest we break for lunch. And we bring it back at 1 o'clock, at which time we will go into closed. And so I apologize to the rest of the staff wanting to make their reports, but that'll be after closed this afternoon. We'll see you at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Peter, by chance, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I tried to start the video and it says host has asked you, oh,
There she is.
Because you didn't turn it off and we're still streaming.
here we go.
So we're still being streamed right now. So just be mindful of that during your conversation.
Thank you.
I see it's 1 o'clock. So hopefully people are rejoining. It looks like folks are rejoining us. Ms. Way, are you ready to roll? Okay. Well, we're going to get together just in time to separate ourselves from our public for the time being. Moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Douglas, whereas Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, provides authority for councils of municipalities to close a meeting or parts of a meeting to the public if the subject matter pertains to a matter identified in Section 239(2). And whereas the Council of the Township of Georgian Bay deems it necessary to close this portion of the meeting in order to address matters under the following sections of 239(2). A, Special Council minutes of October 5th. B, Planning Council closed minutes of October 13th. C, Council closed minutes of October 14th. D, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or a local board. Macy Bay Development Charge Appeal. E, cyber insurance. Now be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Georgian Bay moves into closed session of council at 1:01 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. If we could stop the live streaming, please.